Would I, 38 female, be an idiot if I got back together with my ex-husband, 37 male, who cheated on me 10 years ago? My ex-husband, who we'll call Mike, and I had been dating since we were 14 years old and were married when we were 22. We have 2 children together, 15 female and 11 male. Every 3 months, my ex-job husband travels him all over the nation for a week. During one of those visits, he met up with a colleague who became his friend. I had never idea he was capable of such a thing, since our connection had always been strong between us. He admitted his guilt as soon as he returned home. I'm very sure I would have never found out if he hadn't told me. He begged me for forgiveness, saying that he still loved me and that it was a slip of judgment on his part, but he also stated that he would understand if I wanted a divorce, which is exactly what occurred in the end. It was a really pleasant transaction, and he ended up giving me more money than I anticipated: house, child support, alimony. Even though it was a difficult process, we eventually reconnected as friends and developed a positive co-parenting relationship. Mike is a wonderful parent, and his children continue to adore him. I married him 3 years later, and he was really extremely supportive of the decision. I divorced my second spouse 2 years ago because he had changed his mind about having children. I want one last baby. Since the lockdown, Mike has visited us on a regular basis. At this time, our friendship is so strong that we don't need to impose any of the scheduled visits or other obligations. Well, things have been heating up between us for the last several months, and we've been having together as a result. I'm also a woman with requirements, and to be quite honest with you, he's still the greatest person I've ever been with even after all these years together. It's as if our bodies were designed to complement one another. He used to tease us about being like Prime Pippin and Jordan in bed, and when he said it again, it seemed like we were back in the same place we were 10 years ago when we were still dating. It was meant to be a purely physical experience, yet here we are. It was just a few hours earlier that he brought up the possibility of us getting back together. He made the most sincere speech about how dumb he was the night he cheated and how he has never stopped loving me in the subsequent 10 years, which I found to be really touching. After realizing I couldn't speak, he just flashed me his trademark toothy grin and remarked, "It's all right, I'll wait," before driving away. Now I'm laying here in bed, typing this out in my head. I'd be lying to you if I claimed I didn't have feelings for him. The previous few months have been the happiest I've been in years, and I'd be lying if I claimed anything otherwise. In addition, I'd be lying if I claimed I'd never forgiven him for his deceit. That I had done so was something I told him years ago. If I had to make a decision right now, I'd get out of bed and drive to his place to pick him up and bring him back home with me. It's taking every ounce of my resolve not to do it. I'm in love with him. However, I would want to use my reasoning abilities in this situation. Advantages of bringing him back: he's a wonderful father, and the children would benefit from having him around more. He's a fantastic supplier. He maintains that he still desires children. I still have feelings for him. I'm not sure what the cons are yet, but maybe some of you can provide some insight. Do you have any suggestions about how I should proceed? Edit. When we began sleeping together, I was the one who initiated the relationship. Update. I contacted Mike to let him know that I wanted some time and space to sort things out on my own. He then said, "I've waited 10 years, so I'm willing to wait a little longer." My heart melted as I read this. When our children awoke, our son was on the lookout for his father. He's at the age now when he looks up to his father almost as if he were a superhero. Mike, on the other hand, is an incredible father, so I understand why. Throughout the morning, our daughter gave me the stink look. My daughter confronted me about Mike after lunch, while our son was in his room playing video games. I think she was essentially saying that she was aware of what was going on, guess we aren't that stealthy, and that she didn't want our fights to have an impact on their lives. She was under the impression that we were fighting. Now the divorce has had an impact on her, but not in the way she had anticipated. We made certain that she received therapy as soon as possible following the incident and that her life continued as normally as possible. I'm not going to pretend that it didn't have an impact on her, but I'm confident in stating that we handled the situation quite effectively in the end. Alternatively, we did the best we could. I then had the dialogue about how we weren't fighting at all, but rather that we were working together. We had discussed the possibility of getting back together. After giving it some consideration, she expressed her delight in our success and expressed her hope that it would last forever this time. The next day, I left my children off at my parents' home so that I could speak with Mike at his residence. A lengthy discussion ensued regarding our feelings for one another and what we want to do about it moving ahead. Many of you urged that we discuss what he intends to do the next time we hit a hard patch, particularly given that we intend to have a third child. He informed me that the night he cheated on his wife was still fresh in his mind 10 years later. He informed me that it wasn't worth it in the least, and that it was the worst decision he'd ever made in his life. He promised that if we ever had a tough patch again, we would speak about it like grown-ups instead of kids. He also advised that we seek couples therapy from time to time, even when things were going well. This was an interesting concept. There are certain specifics of our chat that I would want to keep secret, but to summarize, we ended up getting back together. We would proceed cautiously, and we both decided that our children would come first and take precedence above anything else in every decision we make. He is not planning to move in with us just yet, but he would want to spend a couple evenings a week with us. Towards the end of the night, we gathered the children and delivered the news. Our daughter didn't say much since she already understood what was going on, but our son was overjoyed. Because we divorced when he was a newborn, the thought of both of his parents being together was completely foreign to him as he was growing up. They definitely had questions, and we were happy to answer them. Furthermore, we want to provide family therapy in order to make the transition simpler for everyone involved. In general, I'm quite content right now. 10 years ago, Mike committed a mistake. Nonetheless, I carry no ill will against him, and I have totally forgiven him for his actions. I'm certain that he loves me now and will not cheat on me again. I'm reunited with the love of my life, who also happens to be the father of my children, and I couldn't be happier. At the time I'm writing this, Mike is in the next room, playing video games with our little kid. My expectations for the future are unclear, but I'm relieved that he is back in the picture. Peace. Story 2. My 27 male, ex-fiancé 26, female cheated on me with my cousin 25 male. Now my family want me to forgive him because he's sick with cancer. I'm male 27, and I don't have any siblings. But Kevin, I have a cousin. He is 2 years my junior, and we actually grew up together. I spent a lot of time with my father's side of the family. Mom is gone, Dad never remarried, and he has health difficulties, and I was there with Kevin the most of the time. We did everything together. We battled / played / cried / laughed together. My grandparents have always been quite close to me as well. As a result, I felt really at ease being there. I was engaged to my ex-fiancée at the time. Most of the time, I would bring her over to my grandparents' place. Her, myself, and Kevin would spend our time together doing stuff. I saw Kevin would want to participate in even intimate discussions and would accompany us anytime we went out to supper. I stated some ground rules, but he simply walked right over them. He evolved. He'd instigate conflicts with me, claiming I'd forgotten about him and was favoring my ex above him. I didn't know what to do, so I maintained my distance. Within the next 2 months, my aunt informed me that Kevin was often meeting up with my ex, and she expressed concern that anything was going on between Kevin and my former fiancé, and she was correct. My ex and Kevin had gotten involved, and I was kept in the dark while I was preparing our wedding and sending out invites. I felt like complete. I couldn't control my rage, so I put a halt to everything and broke off communication with Kevin and his family. Except for Dad, who need my assistance. It's been more than a year. I knew Kevin was in and out of the hospital, but I had no idea why. Until my aunt contacted me and informed me that Kevin had liver cancer and was not doing well. I drove my father to see him once and spotted my ex, who is now his girlfriend, there and immediately fled. I maintained my distance, and I did so lately. I began receiving phone calls from family members inquiring, "Did you hear about Kevin?" and repeating the same narrative to me. My grandma phoned because she wanted to plan a family meal for Christmas and Kevin had been released from the hospital. And he asked me to come in the hopes that I would resolve my problems with him since I may not be able to do so later. But I declined. She advised me that I needed to show empathy and let go of the past because what happened to him was enough for me to let it go. They began to put pressure on me from all sides. I informed my grandmother that I would not eat at the same table as my ex-fiancé and the person who hurt me and pretend to be a happy family. They responded that I was bitter. Whatever happens, he'll always be my cousin. It's the same folks that let my ex into their home after what she did and then sided with Kevin, saying they only let my ex in for Kevin's benefit, and now demand that I make amends with him since he plainly deserves more pity than I do. I'm severely wounded, and I can't bear the thought of sitting at the same table as the folks who have caused me the greatest pain. So, what should I do now? Everyone, I believe, is being unjust by denying or simply disregarding what Kevin did to me.